This is the second time I've done this. I forgot to start the YouTube delay. All right, so we will get trivia started in just a moment. And sorry everyone for me ruining the trivia and question portions. I realize it's 2 sets of questions. All right, so within your groups, your teaching fellow is allowed to help you, but when it comes to the code execution portion, I ask that the teaching fellows maybe not answer it too fast. You may have more experience on reading code, knowing how it executes. So we'll start with some trivia. Oh, and then I have it open over here too. I can see it twice. So as this mentions, we're going to start the first bit with Family Feud style. If you're having difficulty seeing in the back, I have the YouTube dealie up, as well as that TV back there is also showing it. I will read every question aloud, but when it comes to the code snippets, I don't think you want me to read those aloud. I didn't know this had fancy slide transitions till just now. So if you're unfamiliar with the rules of Family Feud, if you've never seen Richard Dawson or many of the other Family Feud hosts, these are the rules of what, this is not really the rules, but this is how they came up with the answers. Launch Code did the same thing. I don't actually know who the 100 people they interviewed are for these questions, but apparently they did interview 100 people. And you get one guess amongst your group. The way this is actually going to work, should add a piece of paper. We actually do need a piece of paper for each group. So that's a gotcha. They didn't send me paper with my email that had this link in it. Does every group have a piece of paper? If you don't have a piece of paper in your group, raise your hand. All right, I assume that means everyone has paper, because at the end you'll trade to other groups and they'll grade it for you. So you also need to be nice to the group next to you, because they could grade it and purposely mark them wrong. It's not exactly correct. All right, so we will get started. The Family Feud questions are a bit easier. So the first half is going to be Family Feud, and then the second half of questions are going to be sort of random. All the questions are related to the class and topics within the class. Second set of questions is less Family Feudy and more traditional. All right, and I'll give about 30 seconds, much like Family Feud, for each one of these questions. So, name a piece of clothing people buy without trying on. You're supposed to write it down. You're supposed to write it down. Discuss within your group, though. I almost actually said, what is the most common answer out of reflex? I poisoned the well because I already looked at the answers, so I can't even say anything. So I might actually reveal the right one. All right, 30 seconds are up. I think, yep. Question 2, name a lollipop flavor. The difference here between Family Feud is we're not buzzing in across 6 groups and choosing a winner. Also, I'm not going to walk through each group and proceed like Richard Dawkins did. That would be uncomfortable. Grape is a better flavor.
Go with cherries, but I heard more cherries. The grape is a good choice too.
All right, question 3. Name a bad job for someone who is accident prone. Airplane pilot.
Construction.
Preschool teachers.
Who wants to go with construction? Electrician. Butcher.
All right, question 4. Name an animal you wouldn't want in your china shop other than a bull. Now I realize why a bull wasn't one of the answers.
And actually, Mythbusters suggested that bull avoided.
Was there any red china? To repeat, name an animal you wouldn't want in your china shop other than a bull. Which apparently Mythbusters is myth busted.
Like kangaroo. What's that?
10 more seconds.
Going with kangaroo.
Boom. That was 10 seconds, I bet. Name something you shouldn't do in front of the Queen. Queen is capitalized, so the implication is that it's Queen Elizabeth II. I'm going to Google that.
I don't know. Just 60.
She's a 64 years. In June, it will be 64 years of Queen Elizabeth.
Turn your back. So who wants to go with hug? How about turn your back? It's a tie. I'll do the tiebreaker. I'll say it. Hug.
All right, those are our 5 Family Feud style questions, each of which is worth 1 point. You'll care about points later whenever the points are added up. Now we're on to our normal trivia. You will get more time with these because they're less fast and loose like Family Feud is. All right, I actually couldn't do this. So name all 5 members of the Launch Code Education Team. Note that it specifically says Education Team. As a hint, you saw all 5 in your webinar that happened.
Zach, Sally.
Oh, well, there were multiple webinars. 2 of them.
Yeah.
We got Zach, Sally, and Haley. Did they say we could look it up?
No. Your laptop is supposed to be closed during this trivia, like most trivia contests. You're not allowed to look up answers during the contest.
That rule does not apply retroactively.
So we got Zach, Sally, and Haley, and we're missing 2.
I can actually name them.
I think maybe there's an
And? Cool, why not?
Close.
or
Anne is part of the business team downstairs.
Chris?
No, you only get 5 answers though. So if you name like 8 in hopes that you're swinging at the fences, you get none correct.
What about country?
Well, I would go with -2 because they're both wrong and an extra.
What's Jesse?
Also
Go for it.
We're going to go to the next question. Name the person who invented Python. And the full name is required. I did state his, well, I can guarantee you Tom knows it. I did mention it at least 4 of the classes. You can probably hear it in the recording. But you can't look that up.
It's Italian.
Your hint is I believe he is from Norway or Poland?
I think he's from Netherlands.
That is right. A northern country.
Guido Van Ross.
Give you another little bit longer to think about it. Han Solo shot first. That might be a hint. Used to work at Google. He now works at Dropbox. If you know everyone that works at Dropbox, you might be able to find this person.
By all accounts, he's a really nice guy. And yeah, I'd advise, or I'd suggest looking at his presentations.
Question 8. What does the third argument of the range function do? This is Python specific. What does the third argument of the range function in Python do? It's the built-in range function in case anyone tries to be tricky and write their own range function and then argue that did whatever they wanted. Next question is this code snippet. What is the result of this code snippet? And you can also see it on that back monitor for everyone back there that's squinting their eyes to look up here. Am I able to zoom in? Nope, can't zoom in. Not an option.
Hello. Unit 2.
Unit here. That makes more sense. With an exclamation point.
Hello, Unit 2.
And casing as well as punctuation and space matter in your answer. I'll walk to the other end and back. For your time. All right, this one requires a bit more work. If you were calling Caesar with 10, what is the output of calling this? The assumption is that this Caesar works like the Caesar cipher that you all wrote. Then I'll make some noise so that if people say the answer, not every group hears that.
Looks like the first letter.
We just like rub the top.
First letter is oh, okay. Got it.
Ambient white noise. That's really good for microphones.
HTML.
All right, so when I make it back, it will change. I think that's. And then there's a bonus question that is very obtuse. So enjoy reading this and figuring out what it does. There's a function called mystery that does a mystery. And then what is the output of this little program? So there's 2 for loops, 2 conditionals, and some stuff happens. Let's see what happens in there. They made it really easy to read by removing all white space for formatting. Take notice of the indentation of each piece. You're also allowed to talk amongst your group. It doesn't have to be silent. You can give ideas. Maybe it prints a Q. Maybe there's a Q on the screen after it finishes. There might be too much conversing on the answer.
This is old exclamation mark.
I'll see that. I'm going to say that kind of loud. I don't want to get ruined by solid groups.
Isn't it?
No. So I can read it out loud so that the groups that are discussing it. So there's a for loop that ranges from 0 to 4. Then it goes to another one that ranges from 0 to 3. Then it modulos on all the even numbers and then does some stuff with this temp variable. As well as then after that, it goes into some other stuff, the temp variable, some lengths, some negative indices, business. Then it goes into some other stuff with the temp variable, and then there's another one. Then it returns the temp variable. And then at the end, it prints a mystery. What's that song? Is that a Cascada song or an Enya song? All right, does anyone need a question redone before we pass to a group, pass to another group? Oh, any other questions besides the last one? What? Number 2? Did someone say number 2? I'm going to wait about another 10 seconds, and if I hear no other questions besides the last one, that's the only one we're going to do again. All right. We'll do the last one again. It has a mystery, and then it does stuff. I will give another 3 minutes for this question. So then the way we'll rotate the paper is we'll just do it clockwise. So then, I believe it's Mary's group will give it to Reggie once we do that. But we're not doing that yet because we're still figuring out this last bonus problem. Also, the reason it's not color coded. That's the reason it's hard for me. Let's get a crayon and color it for you all. A little red crayon for you. Ooh, I could use a highlighter. Some markers. You 1.5 more minutes. Unless there's a mini revolt at the end of that time, in which case you can have a little bit more. I'll just shuffle quickly across the screen. Slowly make my way out and change the question. Still bring some hard combat and then covering out.
Does anyone want to see our answers?
You're on a long time.
Yeah.
Any other questions besides the last one need repeating? Yes. Yes, one answer, much like Family Feud. I'll go over those again so you can have a reminder. We'll go through them quickly. I'll give 10 seconds to each one. These are the Family Feud style questions. In case you wanted to see the graphic again, Family Feud. They definitely paid for the rights and licensing. Name a piece of clothing people buy without trying on. What? I'm not giving answers. I'm rereading the first 5 so people are sure. Answers are not happening. Name a piece of paper that people buy without trying on. Piece of clothing, not paper. No one tries paper on before. We're buying it. Name a lollipop flavor. I'm giving a second chance because some people were confused as to how many answers they can give. You were only allowed one answer for these first ones. If you have more than one, you get a big X like you would on Family Feud, which means no points. And then you end up with 3, and then you switch to the other family. Name a bad job for someone who is accident prone. Name an animal you wouldn't want in your china shop. A mastodon. And name something you shouldn't do in front of the queen. All right. Trade your sheets with the other teams, which was rotating clockwise. So Mary's team comes on up to Reggie's team, and Tom's goes to Mike's, and that sort of. That's counterclockwise. It's counterclockwise. I have to picture the clock when I do it. It's counterclockwise. You give it to Tom. Tom's group. Yes. Tom's up here. Tom's over here, Reggie. All right, does everyone have someone else's teams? Wait, Mike, did you not give Jonathan's team your team stuff? I said clockwise, but I meant counterclockwise.
I don't know where mine is now. Wait.
There's a group with two. There is a group that has two sets of answers. If you have a piece of paper with answers on it, hold it in the air. Okay. Ensure that paper is not for your group before we begin. All right. Everyone has one that didn't start with their group. We are off to a rock solid beginning. All right, answers. Name a piece of clothing people buy without trying on. Now, much like the Family Feud, the way your points will work out are based on here. Yes. Socks, hosiery, 42. Underwear, 32. Necktie, 5. I just think you never need to try that on. Unless you're tall. Very tall. Scarf. Shirt. And that's it. There are 5 answers. And those are the points you get. Tally those points next to the team. Name a lollipop flavor. Cherry. Strawberry. Grape, which was a great answer. Orange. And lemon. No one eats a lemon lollipop. Chocolate. And I think that's it. Yes. And chocolate, all those fancy chocolate lollipops. Sure, apple's more common. I want to know the 100 that were interviewed for these questions. Did everyone get a chance to copy the number? Or a 0? If you didn't actually guess any of these, your team gets 0 points. Name a bad job for someone who is accident prone. A driver is number 1. So if you put like over-the-road trucker, that would also fall in that category. More lenient than strict on the answers. Probably should have said that 2 slides ago. Construction. No one wants to get hit with an I-beam. Police officer. Food service. And glassmaker. Because then they would never have a product. Think of the glass blowers in Branson. And then similar to the glassmaker, a window washer. You get a lot of insurance claims as a window washer if you were accident prone.
Surgeon.
And then finally, the last answer is surgeon, which acceptable in there would also be something like a doctor. So they do, in this scenario, they do a similar service.
So Reggie's group had socks, cherry, and surgeon.
Oh, you went from first to last. Name an animal you wouldn't want in your china shop other than a bull.
Reggie's group said elephant.
Elephant is number one. I think mastodon is larger, has tusks, they're much bigger. A cow. Cow is number two. Number three is a horse. A bear. I think that's more for injury purposes than actually breaking anything in the china shop. A hippopotamus or hippo, but either one. And a rhino. Rhinoceros is also acceptable. You spelled it all the way out. And then moose. It's just moose. There's really no other deviation from moose. Call them oversized elk. And then the last Family Feud style question. If I recall, the answers to this one are likely not what many of you were thinking about. Name something you confront. Is curse, or say a vulgarity or cuss. Computer. Uh-oh. There we go. Ah. Oh no. It caught back up and I ruined it. I went too fast. Oh. All right. Second, really, the middle three were just different ways to be somewhat disgusting in front of the queen. Laughing is apparently not allowed in front of the queen, as is not smoking. However, if you've watched The Crown on Netflix, the smoking seems unlikely. That's something you shouldn't do in front of the queen, because plenty have. You should also watch The Crown if you haven't on Netflix. It's an enjoyable show. Has nice scenery, and the costumes are really good for the period. It's bonus trivia. Also, I looked it up. She's been queen as of June of this year for 64 years. Longest running queen in England's history. Those are bonus trivia facts, not even up there. Is that music coming from these or something else? Okay. All right, name the 5 members of the LC education team, half point for each, because apparently none of them are worth a full point. Zach, which by the way, if you spell your name like that and you're Zach, I will pronounce it Zach. Sally, Haley, Jesse, and Chris is the final one. Jesse and Chris are in charge of the curriculum. Haley helps them some there. And then Zach and Sally, as you have seen, do a lot to administrate the course. In fact, most questions that I get asked that are related to the course, I just pass on to Zach and Sally. They're also good to ask questions about launch code in general. So here is your LC education. Who invented Python? That is Guido van Rossum. Misspellings are okay, but full name is a requirement. So Guido by itself, no, it's 0 points by itself. So I think the right, so this is where it's confusing because you saw each one of those had a lot of points, whereas these on their own are not worth necessarily a ton. Apparently the people are only worth half a point. There's no point total on here, so we'll say each one of these are worth 15 points. We'll say they're worth 15. So Guido van Rossum, because your Guido could have been referring to Guido who shot at Han Solo's second on Tatooine in A New Hope. What does this third argument of the range function do? Nope, no takers. All right, I'll just show it then. It is the step parameter. So if you give a step of 2, it'll choose every second number in the range that you gave it. So it is the step. Anything that describes a step is an acceptable answer. Or gets more detailed with these consecutive numbers. Yeah, business.
15 points again?
I'll say this one is worth 20. This one, what did it say? Yes, the launch code staff didn't value themselves highly, so they're a half point each. So that was worth 2.5 points in total. If you guessed more than 5, you get all of them wrong. Just so everyone is aware. So specifically step 5. Does anyone? Nope, no one wants to say what it said. All right, it said hello, comma, space, unit space, 2 exclamation points. So you should look very carefully to make sure they put those spaces in there. I would show you, but it doesn't let me.
No, in the code.
There's no space in the code. It's actually a trick question. Oh, I can't edit this. So.
How many points is this one?
This one is worth 23.
How many do we take off for the extra space between unit and 2?
Pretend there's no space after unit.
I'm talking about on the paper, not on the screen.
Oh, if there is a space? I mean, if you don't get it exactly correct, you get 0 points. You don't get any of the 23 points. You get 0. It's all or none, much like the assignments are 0 or 1 point. This one's 0 or 23 points. And then the Caesar question, this one will be worth 27 points. And that is correct. It says HTML. Lowercase, if they wrote it in uppercase, that is incorrect because that is not what the cipher does.
H should be capital because the X rotates around capital letters.
Yeah, it preserves case. That's how the that's how the function should have been written. So if you didn't write your function, I can pull up the assignment. I mean, we can read through the riveting crypto one if we wanted to mention that, or we can pass. Okay, it was a pass. Mystery. What did it print out? This isn't part of the answer. Right? It's just an exclamation point.
So, that was how much was the previous question?
Oh, I forgot. Wait, did I forget? Yeah, this one was worth 27 points. And the bonus is worth the most points because bonuses should always be worth the most points. It is worth 52 points.
You're doing a Hogwarts house cup thing, aren't you?
52 points for the mystery. So you should write down whoever's group you have. And I can look at them all and then tell you which group got the most answers correct.
So are we bringing?
Well, I'm assuming everyone has graded it. You can bring it to me, and a part of that requirement is it has to be tallied, or it has to be added together, or your team score doesn't count.
The team score that was tallied?
Yes, you need to add together the team score that you're tallying before you give it to me, or your team's points do not count. No, accuracy doesn't matter. You just put 0. There are no points off if the group's name's not on there because I also, really everyone should know what group they had because I said to go clockwise and then I told everyone else to go counterclockwise. Made it really easy. And that's how all the instructions for the assignments are going to work as well. Yeah, they're going to tell you to do something, but then give an example that's the exact opposite. I assume this means no one got any points. Ooh, that is a pretty awesome score. I don't know who determined the points of the numbers, but this score won't integer overflow on a 16-bit machine, I believe. Right? Or is that 8? Be a 4-bit machine. Wait, why are you choosing? That is, I would have counted it. It's too late now.
Too late.
Oh, good. There's a final score. One of these had subtotals, which I suppose is allowed. I did not specify.
There's no space right there. There's no space right there. I heard you guys. They said that there was a space right there.
That one's worth 27 points.
That's 27 points.
I don't have a writing utensil, so it's still 0. All right, I can add that together. Well, then you won't be able to
That's
read it.
23.
Oh wait, this one was 23 now, 27.
I should have said that.
Let's see if I can add. All right, we will start with Mary's group first. Came out with a swinging lead because no one else has any points yet. Actually, I'm going to start with a different group so you can have a moment. Jonathan's group, it appears the total. Oh, never mind. Never mind. That was a subtotal again. The subtotals. All right, Mary's group. We'll just start and I'll pick them up randomly. Mary's group scored 113.5 points. Oh, right, because there were 2.5. Sorry, 213.5. I told you I would try to do the math, and there's a chance it would be wrong. Off by 100. But I just wrapped around. That's what my ciphertext did. Right back to the beginning. Jonathan's group just underneath at 209.5. So the fuzzies right here. Oh dear. That's what I was doing. I was trying to remember what it was called. You read my mind. You knew I wanted to go to CodePen. And Google knows that I mean CodePen when I type CodePen. See? Who knows? Oh, I apparently also have a password in there. Oh. Everyone should have two-factor authentication on their accounts. You have a moment where you could log in as me if you also knew my password. Well, that's peculiar. I wanted to be on CodePen. All right, and the reason I'm doing this specifically fine. I'll just log in with a password. I have no idea what that password is. And the reason I'm going to do this is because we're actually going to cover a little bit of the HTML. It's going to be great fun. Oh, this doesn't autocomplete like the little fancy dealy on Code Academy does. Oh, the pen was stolen. All right, so we can keep track of what each group has. So marriage group has 213.5. Next up was Jonathan's group.
CSS.
209.5. There was a desire for me to change the font size. We haven't really covered that necessarily. So instead of that, I'm going to add some zoom size. And we haven't covered it, but that's very difficult to read. So ignore the CSS column. Is there a what is the way for me to only show the H? Oh wow. That's fancy. All right, so Jonathan's team at 209.5. Next up is for some reason I just typed it, couldn't read it. Mariah's group at 198. If you feel you need to contest any of the answers, you can come and contest them, but I'm not going to write them down differently. So you'll have to find me a pin. Mike's group. I'll make this full size again. We get more space. Look at that, all the extra space. So Mike's group is at 196.5. I didn't actually sort them beforehand, but this is working out. Whoa. We have a heavy hitter for this next group. We have a heavy hitting group. I'm not going to say which group that is yet. And then we have another one at 2:55. Oh. Reggie's group.
Oh.
And Tom's group. So the winning group, if I can get this to show. So we have Reggie's group at 2:55. And as a bonus, this is a tool you can use if you want to quick see what your HTML will look like as you're working through it. You can use CodePen, which is pretty nice. It also lets you do CSS and JavaScript, and it'll all just kind of jam it together right there so you can see what things will look like.
And it does Jade.
There was a shout out for using the Jade, which is a template engine. You need not worry about that for now.
They wanted to know if they get free A's for winning.
Question was, as you probably heard, do they get free A's for winning? Actually, no, you're now expected to do better than everyone else for all of Unit 2. So
That
that's.
shouldn't be hard, given those scores.
So you'll find out on Thursday. Oh, I can save this. I don't even know what it does. There you go. You can change the view. And then that's what the market did. Because they're all inside their own P tag, which is why they get the bonus space right in here. So there are two options now. Did the teaching fellow groups ask those the other questions that you were sent to your group yet, minus Reggie's group? Raise your hand if you already talked with those questions with your group. The ones that I sent in email specifically. Well.
You went over the general question? That's what I want to know.
Just the general ones?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Good then.
There were more.
So you should have these. Did you go over these starter questions with your group, all of them? Because that's what you're going to do now before we start in the lecture portion. Is within your group, you're going to go over these questions, but your teaching fellow is going to guide that discussion, so I'm closing it. So congratulations to Reggie's team for winning the trivia challenge. You'll find out Thursday or next Thursday, because we don't have class on Monday of next week because it's Martin Luther King Day. You'll find out then what the prize is for winning. Don't get too excited. This is a warning. So, teaching fellows, guide with those starter questions in there. Chat with your group. I'm actually going to give you about 20 to 30 minutes to cover them. Oh, I didn't mean to.
First question.
Yeah. Specific questions are the starter questions.
Yeah. First question is, what is a document type? What is a document type?
Yeah, I was like, here's a lot of these questions.
So at the top of any HTML document, you usually have a tag. It starts off with doc type. And then declare it as HTML. It's actually not required as a doc. Problems will parse the page fine if you don't do doc type declaration on top. But it's nicely formatted HTML. If you want to pass it through, you put a doc type declaration on top. So what is the next two questions are related, so just cover them at the same time. What is a line element and what is a block element? You provide some examples. Yeah, it is an inline tag, that'd be an example of one. And then a block, or a block element. Div, yeah, a div is a block element. So when you declare, then you want to explain what the difference is between inline and block. Right, so I'm sorry, we do that at names at first. What's your name again? Eric. So Eric was saying that a block element will take up the width of its container. And that in contrast to an inline element. Yeah, it's a box. So yeah, the block element will make draw. You might not see it on visually on the page, but there's an invisible box around the block. So then we'll clear the sides. So when you declare a block element, it's going to take up, like Eric said, the width of its container.
It's easier, feel free to hop. If you want to move your group somewhere.
And it causes the flow to break up on the base. So if you declare it as an anchor tag in contrast, it's going to just appear inline in the text. This is probably at the outset it's not going to be clear why you need to know that detail, but it's pretty important. Like for positioning elements in the page and understanding how. What's the difference between a P tag and an I tag? I is straight. Yeah, P is versus an I tag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Golden metallics.
Old mentalities, yeah. And there's something called semantic HTML where you try to declare, you try to make your tags that you just the document descriptive of the section or part of the document that it represents. So an I tag I don't think is considered semantic. I think it's discouraged to use. Yeah, but yeah, the difference is the mid tag is bold, I is going to be italic. So how is white space impacted by HTML? So if you have a page code and you have a whole bunch of spaces, what will it look like in the browser? So you might have like some piece of text and a bunch of spaces and then some more text. How will that look when you look at it in the browser? It collapses into a single space. And what makes up parts of it like URL? So that you can take any part of it, but what is this? Yeah. Why is for our purposes, we'll just consider those part of the domain name. So all that, like Microsoft.com for example, that's the domain name. That separates the prototype or the protocol. From the domain name. The last part of the URL, or there's actually more parts, but for our purposes, right now, it's be the path, the actual resource that you're requesting on that server. So you're like index studies. Okay, so the next section of questions concerns Git. And so who has Git installed? What does it mean? Everybody has Git.
If I put 6 lines in a row.
And so what is version control? What are the names that version control provides?
All the repository are basically like taking.
What's another name? Version control and source control are two names that you're reading about Git. So what is version control and why is it useful?
But like the studio, I don't know if they have to do it yet, but basically it's just but it'll be your own changes. It's not exactly.
Right. So what Vero is saying is that it allows you to track the changes to files. It's not really very useful for binary files of images, but your text files,
Track is like
your code for HTML, your CSS, JavaScript, all that can be stored in SA. And you can move backwards and forwards in the change history. So if you want to back out some changes and go back to the earlier version, it's very easy to pick that out. Another thing that is really useful about version control is it allows effective collaboration. So people can work on different parts of the document to track all the changes. And merging it into a sense of shared location. And one of those places that is easy to get. And what does the git command git init do?
So that you know that you
That mark the directory that you're going to, when you issue that init command as part of a repository. So your git commands at that point, like all git status was in. They will recognize that directory containing the repository. They initialize the repository. What is the difference between git add and git commit? Right. So there are 3 parts, 3 conceptual steps in the process of using version control or putting a file in. There's a working area. So if you're in a repository, you're editing a file, or actually when you check out a file, that'll be your working set.
Right.
We start out with
Store a web file is different.
there's a staging area or the index. So when you use git add, the file that you originally should be added to that staging area. Prepared to be ready for commit. And commit it, and it's a permanent record. Any changes in the record in that repository, showing what changes you made. So the files that are working, set in the working area, staging / index, and then the committed history. And so when you get added, just add a file to your staging area, and you can moving files from the staging into the permanent history of the files. What does it mean to clone a repository? Clone.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you're basically copying the repository from somewhere else. So if you issue a git clone, yeah, you'll get the whole history. Yes. Yeah. So you can git clone on the computer, you can clone some URL on GitHub, bring it to GitHub. What is the difference between tracked and untracked for files in the repository?
Track files on Google Systems Tracker.
Right. So if you make a change to a file that's not tracked, you would get commit. Nothing will happen to them. Those files will not be stored in the history of that process. And this is talking about it is a little bit abstract. I'll probably have a session just to get outside of class and practice it. But initially, when you go to a new directory, you want to use git init sort of repository. None of the files are being tracked. You can git init and then git status. The information about the repository is skipped, all the files have been tracked. They're not. The repository doesn't go along. In order for them to be tracked, they have to be added. And then after that, and did everyone do the mini test at the mini test on the website?
Oh, the quizzes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Flatiron did. What happened? Oh, it changes questions if you take it over the you didn't have the questions about that.
That'll change all your. And that one's there. Yeah. Later on.
So, as Gary said, we're going to be doing some more prayer programming. So, compare up with someone who's typing and doing more of figuring out what's done next. I don't know how often it's going to be done, but we're going to be doing more of it. They knew what the, and to what your question about, I'll go back to the actual project, but third parties works in C#. C# will be the language covered in the part of the course. The .NET platform uses initialize this language developed by Microsoft. But I'm not sure what context that we have for the project that we've made. I'll find out more about that.
It's only looking at the things that are currently there. So if I add it, I have to tell it, right? So I can add.
So in general, what ways we refer to like questions? Like we have the Piazza discussion forum. I rarely use it actually. It's great to check it out, but I have. Slack, great. I prefer Slack, but if there's somebody that really wants to use Piazza, I will. I do get notifications, but I get a lot of emails, so I guess I'll get to it doesn't look relevant to me. But if there's somebody that really likes Piazza, I'll look at it that more. Otherwise, I think Slack, I think it's a nice channel, and that's what I usually use. So, in general, what do you think about changing from using the period?
There's other reasons stuff here.
Yeah. What's that? Oh, yeah.
That's not the case.
There are some other questions on here that are rather today. Did everybody have a good break? I went to Milwaukee, 20 miles from Milwaukee. Minneapolis. Okay, the last week it was, I had bad timing when I got there. It's always really cold. It didn't get above 0. But I had fun. I don't know. The question was, will it be a break between units 2 and 3? I don't calendar.
So I had good prices.
Okay.
I never to actually just say, I want to track this.
Yeah. Okay. I'll find out.
I do it.
You didn't know.
He said he didn't request it.
Okay.
I don't ever want to track my project.
I'll write that down.
Part of the house is that everyone's on track, and I don't ever use it. I'll do that one time too late.
The other thing is, I would probably guide the parts in class in this meeting. So here is a lot of work to prepare these questions. I didn't prepare these questions. You're going to give me these questions, and then we'll go over like the start of the class. It's pretty more structured to the class.
I'm gonna get into sometimes there's files that say secret keys and I can use a password. But we'll make a file that has all that stuff. Put it in the project and project never want them to track.
So I just want to make sure I've got everybody marked off who was actually required. I apologize for that. I'm going to forget people's names at first. But so Marty introduced herself and I didn't remember. I apologize. But looking for Ryan Meyer. No? How about Philip Huff? Is there anything that you guys really want that's maybe different from the work you've done in the last session? A little slow.
Yeah. Told us to set everything up, told us what we're gonna use, but I'm not exactly sure how I'm supposed to submit the work. So, I think we have to go through that once before.
Okay, all right.
Get a chance to get through.
Yeah, I went through some of these.
I think everyone is through. There's no carrying.
Well, I did have one question about the schedule. Is there going to be a break between the second year and the second student?
I don't believe so.
Okay. No break.
I'm 100% certain, but I don't believe there will be a break. I believe everyone's had enough time to get through those questions. So, yes, I will start with my bonus snippet. All right, so part of the goal, if you noticed, that was hopefully was a little more guided on the questions. If you have questions, which is the version, feel free to send them through the Slack channel, or you and or your teaching fellow are welcome to shout and raise arms in the air to get my attention. So, something I wanted to share with everyone for viewing your HTML. So to make it easier when you're running stuff locally, if you have an HTML file you want to serve up. Serve up is a vernacular that a lot of web developers use to mean that you're going to be able to see whatever you've just done in the web browser. So I would be serving it up. If I use a term that I don't think about, you may not know, it's like wave your arms. So I likely will forget. So this command here, since we all have Python 3 installed, we can actually all do this, even on our Windows machines. So I'll open up my terminal here, and of course it opened in another browser. All right, so to demonstrate that Python command, so this is a wee bit of bonus material. So it'll be easier if you're wanting to test files locally, because if you notice, if you were starting to play with CSS or anything, and you were linking to some other website's images or some other website's style sheets or any of that, if you're just opening a file with a web browser, you are likely to get security warnings, and it won't actually load the content. And the reason for that is to protect you from someone sending you an HTML file in your email and then you opening it, and then it just opening in your web browser and downloading a bunch of viruses. So what you can do locally, because you're on your own machine, you can go to wherever it is that you keep your code. And if you're on Windows, you type dir there, if I recall. So I have my stuff in this directory called code, and I have an index file. So the base file, as you would call it, to serve up. In order for this Python command to sort of work seamlessly, you call it index.html, and then you can type Python. So you can also type Python 3 if you want to make sure you're using Python 3, which I believe both the Windows and Macs installs have. Then you do -m. What that tells Python to do is to interpret and run as if it were code. And then Python has a nice little built-in package called http.server. So then I hit enter, and we will see well, people will be able to see it. Notice at the bottom of my screen gets cut off. So then what that says is serving HTTP on 0000 port 8000. All that means is that you can, on both your Windows or Mac computer, you can go to this thing called localhost :8000, and then you will see that HTML file that you were serving as the index. The advantage there is that it's actually being served from a web server, so the browser won't complain about security problems. So the way the book had mentioned opening them was just open the HTML file with your browser directly. The downside to that is you can run into a lot of issues where your browser complains about it browsers, depending on the security settings on your laptop, just period won't open the file because it's not common for people to locally open HTML files. This is what the rendered HTML looks like. And this is that bonus file. It's on GitHub. I'll link it in the class like always. You can actually cheat. All the classes are likely going to be published before the class, so you can actually see them in your person locally. That was something people had requested, but I'm also changing. For some reason, I thought it was necessary for it to be a surprise. It will no longer be a surprise. You can see what materials will get covered if you go to that GitHub repo beforehand. I, however, won't put the link in there before class in Canvas, mainly because it's possible I could choose to change it last minute, and I wouldn't, like if the URL changes or something, I don't want to mess up what Canvas has. So this is the bonus file. I have all these comments in here. If you wanted to be really fancy, as you can tell, I have a file there. I mentioned this other command that I ran so that if I wanted to be really lazy, I could do this. And once I broke it, so we're just going to ignore that. But that command is what serves up the file that you will see. So to cover, I'm adding a few little bonus pieces in here that were not in your material. You'll see them up front. I already added attributes. Those are largely there to help people that need screen readers or have disabilities whenever they're using websites. Adding some of these attributes help tremendously their ability to traverse the web. So it is important to me and many other web developers to try and make your website as usable by as many people as possible. And it's not a lot of extra work to make it easier for a blind person or someone who has difficulty seeing or hearing or seeing color to sort of do some of these what are called accessibility things for your site. And I'll mention them a little bit as we cover the material. As bonus, you don't have to do it for the class, but I feel compelled to mention it because it is important to me as well as people who have difficulty seeing and go to websites. Difficulty seeing in many different ways. So the first thing at the top of your HTML files when you make them is the doc type. We'll be declaring them all as HTML. The main reason, honestly, for doing this is for browsers to take advantage of a lot of performance gains and assumptions they can make about your file. So if you don't put that there, it can't assume it's rendering an HTML file, so then it's going to load a bunch of extra components and libraries and materials underneath. And the reason for that is because the web has 25 years at this point, 25, 28 years worth of content on it. And every browser needs to be able to, at least in some way, render the Space Jam website that was put out in 1997 and still actually runs to today. So you can go and view that. It's still viewable in every browser and looks mostly the same. But the reason it's able to do that is because it still carries along. That's why browsers are pretty big on your machine. That's why the doc type is needed. It tells it how to interpret the file. It's the same idea. It's like an extra bit on there from it being just an HTML file. You're saying this is an HTML file that matches this specification so that it can then make assumptions perform better. That's why you would put the doc type there. Otherwise, in general, running locally, probably not going to care too much. Covered it in the material. There are three main parts to every file that you create in HTML. You have your HTML tags, element. I will use the terms tags and element interchangeably. Sorry if that is confusing, but it's going to happen as much as I try not to use them like that. So you have your three main pieces. HTML head has what's considered meta information. Kind of tells the browser what the title might be, tells it where to get other external files, It's also used a lot for search engine optimization. So if you want to put stuff in there to try and get Google to put extra things on there, there's actually an attribute specifically you can put inside head. That is that preview that shows on Google when you do a Google search and it shows like first few lines of text. That comes out of the head. And then body is where all the stuff that gets rendered on the page is at. You'll notice I added this lang equals en. That is to help browsers and screen readers to know that the content on this page is in the locale for English speakers. That can help the browser to make performance gains, and that can also help screen readers. Screen readers are what people that have visual disabilities use to go throughout the web. So whereas a lot of us just open web browsers like this, it's possible that someone with a visual impairment will open this, but then they will also use something that's called a screen reader that will go through your markup and use all of the extra hints you've given it to make it a better experience for that person who's only hearing the content on your web page. And if you have this, you see the head element represents a collection of metadata for the document. This gives bonus information. I can just hover over things. I don't have to talk about it. So head is where you would put your title, sort of what we covered. The title is what goes in the browser. So for instance, right up here, we can see it in the tab. And by we, I mean probably like the first 15 people, because it's tiny, and I have no way I know of to increase that. Title's the first HTML example. It goes there. That's another example. If you want your site to show up in search engines, this is a little bonus. You would give titles. This meta, which was not covered, there are a whole slew of meta tags you can give. The reason that I specifically say char set equals UTF-8, and I'll do this in every example that I show and every site that I produce, is it's another way for the browser to optimize the text it's going to render. It also tells it how to interpret it. So if you use things like a copyright symbol or any sort of U with an umlaut on it, a lot of the special characters, or if you're trying to use emojis, for instance, on your site, it can be beneficial across browsers. So one of the things it mentioned was as you build websites, you'll want to test them in multiple browsers. By adding some of these little helpers, it makes it easier to know that a different browser is going to read that emoji that's a frowny face as a frowny face emoji, and not as something custom to that browser. So for instance, Internet Explorer, if you do not put that UTF-8 bit in there, might render some of those emojis as completely different characters. It might look like one of the shortcuts in Word because it decides it looks differently. That's why I always put this in here. Much like the document type, this further tells the browser, hey, this is how you should read this page. So the next step, we have body. Body is where you put all of your content for the page. I'm not good enough with my editor to know how to tell it to slim all those down immediately. So as an example, I'm using right here multiple block level elements. Block level elements being elements largely that preserve white space and will stay in their spot where they are on the page. Block level versus inline, you're going to get that question a lot as you go through the class, because as we learn more things about HTML and CSS, that difference will matter more whenever you're trying to get different pieces of your pages to lay out as you want them to. So the tags we've covered so far, I believe paragraph tag, they covered the span tag. The span tag is an inline tag. What that means is that it can be put inside other elements and tags and will not cause them to break the space. So like right here, we have 2 paragraph tags for this first div. First div tag, we have these 2 paragraph tags. The way that that renders is we end up with 2 breaking paragraphs in one spot. So then here with these inline tags, so I actually have an inline tag inside an inline tag. So you'll see this on Thursday. It'll link to a reference about there's a load of HTML tags you can use. This code tag, the basics of it, so you've seen the bold and the italic tag. Those do different things to the text. The code tag also does something by default different to the text, and in most browsers that will end up making your text be what is called monospace, which is to say every character gets the same width on the screen. Most fonts that you use do not do that, but a lot of times in developing, people will favor monospace fonts so you can easily tell indentation. So here I use the code block, code tag there so that you could see that it gives us slightly, by default, in different browsers, it will give a slightly different look to things in a code tag. Those are both inline tags. More examples of the block tags. Now, specifically, tag, so we can see that over here. So we can see that there's bold and italic. A little more. So I won't do many more. It's maxed out. As much as it zooms in. So I'll do the same thing I did a moment ago. There we go. And that's the advantage to that little running locally web server is each time you save it, you can just refresh your web page and you'll be able to see what is there. Bold makes your font bold. Italic does a little slanty, italicized dealy. There was a question about the EM tag versus the I tag. So the difference between, so here, I can use EM, or I can use I. And as you'll see, they will both make it look italicized. You can also use the B tag to make things bold, or you can use what's called the strong tag to make things bold. Then over here, so you can use the EM or you can use the I. The key difference between the two is related again to accessibility, like I had mentioned, for people that need to read pages. EM means emphasis. So what you're trying to convey with that is that you're putting more emphasis on a given word from a semantic standpoint. So from the meaning of the word, you want to give it more emphasis, whereas the italic is just style related. You just want it to look a little different. It's not necessarily related to the meaning of the word. And then it's the same with using bold versus strong. Bold is just style. Strong is kind of like yelling. And so you could view EM and strong as both like putting an exclamation point at the end of the sentence. The difference, one being yelling and one being more meaningful. but they both visually do something different. So also keep that in mind whenever you're using them. Most of the time, what you'll likely want to use are the EM and the strong tags, because generally if you're making a point to call out a word, you're calling it out on purpose. And then the last element to cover, and I'm going to zoom out now so you can see it, is the anchor tag, done as an A. And you can, in order to set it up, you give it an href attribute, which tells it where that link should take the person who clicks on it. So over here in the example, come over here, we see. I held down my command key when I clicked it. That's why it didn't just open in the same window. And then it would take me over here. And the reason I actually specifically linked to this is if you have this, if you have any questions about tags, their meanings, when you should use them, anything like that, this is the specification for the HTML language. If you want to come over here and read about it, you can come over here. It's really exciting. Right now, the latest published is 5.1, small increase from the 5.0. And then if you're curious, the history page, you can read that. It's interesting. It's very long. But if you want to know more about the language itself, you can read about it at that link, which can be helpful if you're trying to figure out why certain elements are laying out in a weird fashion, or why when you read an answer someone posted 4 years ago about which markup to use, and then you try it now and it doesn't render the way that changed in the specification between when that post was made and browsers today. That's why web development's a lot of fun. Changes regularly. And the last bit on HTML, before we cover the little bits on Git that we have done, is another link, and I linked on there. I believe this is also linked in the class notes. It's actually linked from the Tower page, but this is a cheat sheet of all the Git commands, what they do, sort of different areas that you can use them. Any questions on the HTML before we hop into Git? All right. We will get into Git. Huh. Zooming in doesn't work on that plugin. You can cheat. I have all of these already on GitHub, so they're viewable. Nope. That didn't do what I thought it did. So this is a quick covering of what we already did in Git. Seems like everyone had a pretty decent grasp on what it does. Git is what's called a source control management system or a version control system. Both acronyms are used, VCS or SCM. They mean the same thing. It's a tool used to version your code, which is good for collaborating with other people as well as backing up your code so that if your computer explodes and you have your code stored on GitHub, you don't have to worry about losing your code. You can also store other things like images and such in source control, and that can make it nice so that you can then see, like, over time, if you were to change an image, you have multiple versions of that image. So creating a repo, use git init, creates a new repo. That I think everyone should have ran that command Git add adds all items to the index. What that means is it adds it to the current state of your file system right there in your repo project that you're working in. So if I git add the changes that I've made, it'll just add each one of those files. So git add period adds everything in the current index. That period is actually is specific to the terminal that you're in. The period represents current directory. So it doesn't apply globally, it's just to your current directory. That sort of relates back to the terminal commands. Git add a specific file, add that specific file to the index. You need to git add files before you can commit them. So add is required, add puts it on the index. You can sort of think about an add is kind of like picking the box up off the warehouse floor and then putting it on the forklift. And then git commit is kind of like the forklift putting it into the shipping truck. Because the shipping truck is where you want all your code to go so it can go out to people. So after you've added things, you do a git commit, -m. That -m is important in order to add a message so that when people look at those commits, they can see what happened. As an example, here, this is the commit I made when I put, this is the message I gave for this commit of the class. So git status shows you everything that's in the repo. And then as we sort of covered, well, you would have covered, or the clone, use git clone to go and get the code from a remote. And so you can, as an example, I'll show you over here in the terminal. I'll close that little web server down. Right here in my temporary folder, what you can do to get a remote repository, you do git clone, and then you put the URL to the Git repo. We covered URLs as well. The first bit there is the protocol, so HTTPS, which is HTTP over SSL. Next is the domain, which is github.com, and then the rest after that slash is the path, which tells it where to find the GitHub repo, find the Git repo on GitHub. And that's something that is very easy to do, is to confuse Git and GitHub. Git is the source control management tool. GitHub is just a website that will host your code for you if you just so happen to want to put it there. So here I can clone it. It will go and clone the repo. And by default, if you don't type anything after that command, it creates a directory with the name, that last little bit, which is the name of the repository. So then I can go in there, run the git status command, says that everything's up to date. As I had mentioned, so the clone. Now to give a live action example, I actually do have changes here. So this is so I ran git status. What this says is that I am behind master by 2 commits. This is actually because Jonathan fixed some grammar I had and gave what's called a pull request. So I merged his changes in, and that's why it says I'm behind by 2 commits. So this is an example of where if you collaborate with Git to make it easier. So I have some grammatical errors in what I put in the repo. You don't get to see them now. But you could look at the history and find them. You get bonus points if you come on Thursday. You can give your team an extra 40 points if you find my grammatical errors in the repo. And then you'll get the prize for your team that they would have gotten, unless Reg's team also has it, in which case they're still up by 40 points. So what this says is changes not staged for commit. So this means I haven't added those changes to the index file. So if you're ever curious what changes you made because you're not sure and you haven't added them to your index yet, this is a bonus. You'll use this command later. It's a bonus now. You type git diff, and it will show you the changes you made. So I added the style in here. I changed, and I changed the new lines in that file. Sort of a way for you to be able to tell what has changed. Git status tells me what's there. So then what I'm going to do now is I'll run git add January, add that specific file. Then I run git status here. And now what it says is changes to be committed. And then it shows that file is what needs to be committed. So then I run git commit -m. And there are likely many a typo in my git commit messages over time, both in here and at work. So it's a bonus for anyone that ever gets to work with me. My commit messages are often misspelled, as are my code comments.
What does it mean when it says you're behind the origin master, you can fast forward?
Oh, so right here, so I committed, as we can see now. For whatever reason, when I'm on this projector, the last like 6 lines of my terminal just don't show up. So I committed those changes. 1 file changed, 22 insertions, 2 deletions. Just let you know sort of the stats of what you changed. And now if I run git status again, just to see what's happening, now it's a little bit more interesting. I have 1 and 2 different commits from what is in master, which is what is on GitHub. I have 1 more commit locally, and then there are 2 different commits already there. So I can run this git pull command. And it will pull in those changes to my local repository that you have. So the way GitHub works is I can have a Git repo of this code, and in order to change it, Jonathan cloned it, made changes to it, and then submitted those changes back to me. And that's one of the big powerful features of Git, is that you can easily share those changes. So now if I go here, oh, I don't have that shortcut. Oh, I have to hit enter. There we go. So then if we git log command, you'll actually learn on Thursday, but you can actually see right here the change that was made to fix the grammar. But you don't know what grammar it was, so you'll have to investigate how to use Git further to get those bonus 40 points. Are there any other questions on Git? Which I will say git and get the same way, because I used to say get as git, and then git became a thing. It's from St. Louis area originally, so I pronounce words incorrectly. I did change how I say the word both, though, so you should be happy there's no L. That took years. Years of focus. So the last bit that I wanted to cover, that's all I wanted to cover for the lecture. The last bit that I actually want to cover there we go. Look at that. It's easier if I can see it in front of me. And something so 2 points for Thursday, sort of think about. The Thursday's pre-class work, if you have not started on it yet, starts with 4 HTML, getting more into HTML examples. The last 2 will actually start to do some CSS, so don't be thrown off by that. And then after that, there are 4 work-throughs for CSS. It is very important to actually have all the class material, pre-class material done before you get to class. And that is true going forward. And it's also important to do the studios, because some of what you learn will only be in the studios. So there is some material we will only cover that is in studios. It won't all just be in the pre-class. The studio will actually have concepts in it in most of the classes that are not covered in the material. And a large part of that is so that we can work as groups and learn that together. So it's a lot less likely to sort of stumble at home over that. First assignment is due next Thursday. So if you kind of want to start, it's called HTML Me something, I believe is the name of the assignment. If you want to start getting worked on that, feel free to do that. You can do a lot of that assignment with what you have learned as of this class. To do all of it, you'll need what you learn on Thursday, but you can get started on that whenever you want to. But do remember that the studio time and the time at the very beginning of class, which will be a little bit different because you'll be getting actual questions, that is meant to be focused on learning that, not doing assignments. You're going to have what will be basically starting when I finish talking here to the end of class to work on your assignments. So there will be dedicated time more towards the end of most classes to either work on assignments, if that's what you're wanting to work on, get ahead on the next class's material, or there will be, like there's on Thursday, different people coming in to give different sort of presentations if you want to participate in that. And there's also opportunity if people have something they're very passionate about that they want to cover, to have little breakout sessions in different areas and sort of give a little presentation about that. So that is it for this evening, not unless. You can use the rest of your time to get started on Thursday's class material. Yes? Oh, these examples, I will put the link inside the assignment for today. It's on my GitHub repo. You just search my name followed by GitHub. It goes up. For some reason, my computer is having a hard time. I will add the link to the class, same as I did previously. I'll put it on Canvas. It will be in the class area specifically. I'll do that for all the classes, but I'll do it after class so that if any changes are made, the link to the class doesn't change. Any other questions before? And you are also on the studios and on learning the material up front. You are encouraged, you are allowed and encouraged to work with the other people in your group. So as you cover the material and you do studios, work within your group to solve those problems. It's one of the biggest advantages of being in this class. So if there's someone in your group that's a little bit further along or might understand the material better than you, likely what should happen, if you remember from the pair programming, is you as the less experienced person should have to be the typer. And that other person, you should have a conversation about what you're typing, what you're going through to code onto the screen. And that's actually something that will happen a lot at sort of in a development job, sort of ad hoc. You'll be working on something, you'll ask someone for help that knows more about it, and then you'll talk while you code it out. That is the goal for studios and covering the material. Where you will find links, same as before. You scroll all the way down and you go to the correct one. The last bit that I cover. So I'll add them to each one of the classes. So today is the 9th. So right in here, in the next 20 minutes or so, I will add the link on here, and I'll add it as the last item on all of these. And on Thursday, I'm going to show you the bonus stuff that I have, which is why you can actually see all of this content and don't have to scroll. You can use StyleBot. But that is all for this evening. Feel free to get started on your Thursday material. And that's sort of how a lot of this will work out. We'll likely actually finish more at like 8:15 on average to give you that time to work and ask questions in class. And then for the teaching fellows, you can wander over here and over this section. That would be all the teaching fellows. So you can wander over here for the next like 2 or 3 minutes. Reggie. You wander up here. Over here.
Right now,
But he's got all of those features. So you can. But as far as being able to move he's got it pretty good. I tried it last year. I didn't really start the mindset. But right now, it's $10. And it's not a lot. I record is 3 hours a week. It's a black page. So we create the BBC news, just like the New York Times. What I like about it is it's stuff. He's not he's pretty good, but he says, oh, well, I'm not sure why we can't quite get that. So he starts budgeting. I just like revealing it. I don't know but I just thought that's the other thing. There's just so much out there. This is too much. Yeah. So I looking in, and I feel like jumping down is for me sometimes. Usually it is like what I like about it, like side. So you get on, it's like a rush, cram my brain because I want to cancel it because I don't want to change it. It's too expensive. What else? Why? That's it. So it's like with a business, which is possible. I mean, they've got really big. But I take classes now. I just feel like they've established. I mean, I was spending $10 on classes. You know, but it's free. They have videos. Well, they always talk about that. Here's got that fancy I do have desire to hear this song. One more question. Is a really bad.
Yeah. So they decided to.
I grew up in the IBM Pleasant. What they would sell the manager on, not using IBM, and it's called fear of IBM. That's what they made the managers feel like. $1 million. I kind of think. They've always done is that their JavaScript? You know why all that's so it goes with DLL. See.
I kind of look at it as competing for the job opportunity. As opposed to like I said, I'm not.
Yeah, that's what me as well. We got to do some job.
I don't know what it is. Also, for Python is pulling up too. Batch is Python, for example. I don't think it's that way at all.
I mean, they charge class rotate all of the projects front end full stack. They started I'm not sure. But I guess I just don't have I'm dragging all the CG fellas. I forget like I need to get above average ability.
Like that's all anybody has time for. Really.
In Kansas, language was a teaching for
Yeah. They're no way to advice. Or they not advice.
The great thing is, we'll be available to race.
Yeah.
That provided.
So the
I actually never made it.
no, that's fine.
That is not a diss on you. That is
No, that's fine.
why I
There has been.
It's nothing. 4 hours long.
Especially if you want to go over HTML.
Was that
I think it's all.
I like it. Sometimes I would. It wasn't too much.
Yeah. Like 10 line element versus block.
yes.
No, because it only affects the text. It doesn't make it a visible block.
But it makes an invisible block.
No, it's
But it is a.
That
I screwed up the explanation.
that I will provide answers.
I would like what's new. It's like, I really should have said it.
It's fine. Which that's what I wanted. Basically, that's not.
And then when we're asking questions, it's like some people just go and some people, so it's just kind of awkward to just say yes. I say yes, and I like clarify. great answer. It makes sense. One of the reasons I'll put it on the section below. Question. I mean, if you guys want to do that, want to do that? Yes, on the material. Okay, my goal is to be, so, yeah, we can have like,
It's just instantaneous.
yeah, my group always thinks
That's just,
I kind of like work with voice. Makes it easier to learn. It's like that. It's like it really doesn't. Just useful. And then here's the secret. Yeah, my goal with I'm very good. In general, Thursday, so that I can spend Tuesday night. Yeah, I don't. Hopefully, that was not too much. For me.
So you make sure to get watch your videos and stuff as well.
Right, so that we can answer questions.
Yeah, are you?
Yes. I can write here. And I will continue. They can ask you the specifics. But I say ask you. Well, the name kind of. That's fine. So that was my goal, and that's why I'm keeping this out. So I'm just going to type that in. So I can. That was all. What was happening to it?
I didn't even know you wanted.
Well, I can't. Yeah. But it should be. Or some sort of house. Yeah. I'm going to switch to the beginning. Yeah.
So like first we ask a question.
Yes.
Middle after you launch your booking.
Yes. Watch your studio. Is Thursday studio not that? I don't know. That next one.
That's
true. Right. So that's what I want to show. But since they will encompass that small, I will actually share it. So it's this round I got into depth. Change the height of matching their business. So your job's not wonderful.
You should have taken a little longer on that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it would have, like taken at least 20 hours.
The downside there is you can
The hours, different types of styles, they change.
like, you just did that like that. I really don't know what to do, so I'm gonna go get questions. And I'll sit there and do it. So the goal of this question is so that I which means what? And I didn't even cover this thing as math. So I didn't get it. My goal with that is to get about not necessarily. It's actually easier. My goal with that part is frankly it's specifically too much or even cover it more. So it's sound can't fit. So the goal is that it would cover that. So my goal isn't that. It's sort of the reason why I wanted that. It's sort of force that conversation. Where if I'm just lecturing it, one person out.
There'll be more discussion.
Even on Thursday. And feel free to see.
Yeah, adding it to a watch list or a watch list.
Like that's the HTML will have.
Yeah, like at the very beginning of carousel. I need crazy stuff.
Yeah, okay.
I know. Basically,
Yes. We have like 3 or 4.
So then if we have to.
Ask them.
I believe
Reggie taught the class.
I believe they've changed some of the information. Still be down to
It just took a long time.
They like walking class.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then like when you pull the next branch, there's some stuff. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, that is what. Except I'm not going to worry about it. I've been part of it. I know what is changing. I found all along. about the way that these qualifications will work. Slowly get Nope.
Thank you so much. I like this. I really like it. Yes.
Where is he? So if you get another. Oh, yes.
Like part of the problem is understanding. We'll figure something out. I just wanted to.
Oh, he did. No, just today. Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's good. It's not, it's an and. It's not. What he did wrong. Yeah, it's been, so the first day back, I thought we'd do a little yeah. So I got feed and that sucks. Much like my older brother and all. He's an attendant. Yeah. Where did you say you were from? St. Louis, area. No, town. They were bigger, I think. It's not bad. I got it doesn't can't wait on people in the city. I guess that's in the city. I would say I love it. It's like no one's taking a good day or whatever, but that's where I've seen. I don't mean to do it, but it's like just trying. It's like, hey, well, for some people, I think today. Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, it's like a little break, but they really had it. I have a goal, so for these items, half of that. Yeah, really, if it's work with the check, the job check. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's like 5 Thursday. I mean, we're going to also work on it.
I guess that's sort of how.
They should be able to do that.
Slide. Well, they can also during that last section. Sort of, that was also time.
Yeah, I think we are. Really, it's, for some reason, it's going to be I think sleepers they have to learn it. So if they don't look it out, they're going to have to figure it out. And hopefully it just clicks. Yeah, well, it's crazy how people can't hire that, but it has to be always more into it. Yeah, it's not sure.
Well, a lot of my goal is to
That's something I got to look into.
well, like I mentioned,
Yeah, that's a lot of the time.
but it's sort of the reason why there's no confusion.
In order.
Subversion is